when you're a diverse and underserved patient, you go to a place that does not look like you, and then you can sense this, for lack of a better term, you don't feel seen or heard, then why would you engage? It takes long-term commitment. You can't just come in and say, hey, we want to do a trial, give us people, and then you get your data, and then you never say anything to report it back. But that's not going to build trust either. Because if we can get more in the workforce, then we can likely have more people that can advocate for these diverse populations. So I'll make that clear. They do not count as professional experience. Technically, even your PhD years don't count as professional experience.
Welcome to Common Ground with SMK Medical, the podcast that seeks to provide a platform for open and informative discussions on common issues here in the healthcare industry. As healthcare professionals, we understand the importance of staying current with industry trends and issues. Each episode explores relevant and timely topics such as healthcare policy changes, survey readiness, emerging trends, and so much more. On this podcast, we feature exclusive interviews with top healthcare executives and experts, giving you insights into their experience and expertise into the field. Our goal is to provide you with valuable information that you can apply to your work in the healthcare industry. In this episode, we're thrilled to feature Dr. Manley, the founder and CEO of STEMM and Cancer Health Equity Foundation. Dr. Manley brings a wealth of experience and insights into workplace diversity, clinical trial diversity, and health equity, making this conversation one you won't want to miss. So join us today on Common Ground with SMK Medical and stay ahead of the curve and up to date with our insightful discussions with Dr. Manley. Welcome, Dr. Manley. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing? How's the weather out your way?
Hey, I am blessed to be in Hawaii. It is, just 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. But if I had to guess, it's probably about 80 degrees outside.
It's about the same over here in Manhattan. We've had a lot of thunderstorms. We had thunderstorms 2 days ago, and that finally brought the humidity down because it was a sweat fest.
Listen, I don't even remember what a thunderstorm is, right? I stay down in Waikiki, and I've been here 3 years, and we don't see thunderstorms. So I don't remember what that looked like. When you live on a remote island in the middle of the ocean, you forget and it's probably for the better, what snow looks like, how snow feels. You forget about the thunderstorms, and I'm in a high rise, so I don't see birds or hear birds. So that's one of my pet peeves. When I get to go to a park and I hear birds, I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds like outside, because I don't get to hear that often.
Here around 3 a.m. we'll start hearing the birds chirping. It's like, yep, we have a few trees around us. It's like, okay, hi birds, how are you doing?
See, I miss that. I miss having birds and just being there. But Hawaii's beautiful. I'm with nature all the time, right? You can't ask for a better scenery. So thank you for asking about the weather and my time here in Hawaii. I introduced you as Dr. Manley. Is it okay if I call you that for this podcast?
Sure. And thank you for inviting me. I didn't say that at the beginning, but I'm very happy and honored to be on here and be able to speak about some of the stuff I'm doing and where we're going.
Listen, so let's dive into it. Dr. Manley. Talk about that PhD behind your name. You don't see, I'm going to give you your kudos. We must have been on the same wavelength because we woke up and put the baby blue on.
That really was not intentional. The blue and the glasses. And normally I always wear contacts, but it was just coincidence.
Listen, you look good in it. So
you too.
Talk to me about the PhD. What you have a PhD in what, Dr. Manley?
The PhD is molecular biology, cell biology, and biochemistry. And I finished that at Boston University, technically 2012. I finished in 2012 summer, and then had to wait for January to officially finish because it's just because it was being started in summer term, so I didn't finish by spring semester. So officially I finished in 2013, but my work was done in 2012. But I did a lot. It was a lot of work in lung cancer, related to angiogenesis, tumor microenvironment, combination drug therapies, and gene therapy.
Wow. When I was doing some research for this episode, you sent over a small bio, but he was very humble. He left off the PhD. I was a little taken back by that. So I'm doing some research, and I stumbled upon an interesting fact, and I had to count them myself. I counted 64 publications with your name associated with them.
Well, if we're including posters, podcasts, whatever, yes, but if it's just strict research, probably 11.
Okay. Yeah, I have things when I'm looking at here on the screen. I'm back to 2010, various different things. So yes, I have something. It's a site with your bio and all of that good stuff. So you're an accomplished person in the field of cancer. What's drawn you to that field of cancer?
I honestly do not know. I think, growing up, I had a father that was a chronic smoker. And while he never had lung cancer or anything of the sort, it may have laid a foundation for me to start at some point study cancer. I never knew that was what I was going to do, but I grew up as a chronic asthmatic, and I was in a hospital.
Really?
Yes, it was really bad. I was in a hospital probably 20 to 30 times a year until I was 10. So I was used to being in the hospital. I was used to IVs and needles. Mm-hmm. I'd be the only kid that would be in there not crying. I'm just like, okay. But I think probably the early exposure is what gave me all these anaphylactic allergies. So I still have the anaphylactic allergy, and I still have a lot of allergies. But at least the asthma I still have, but at least it is stable. I haven't had a flare up in so long, so I'm very happy for that. But I think one of the earliest science projects I did was probably middle school, and I was a resourceful kid, and I don't even know how to describe it. I was able to order some kit because we didn't have anything on us. So I probably had a magazine, so I ordered some science kit where you had like a rubber bulb and a filter pads and an apparatus. And then, when the neighborhood stores knew you didn't smoke, you can go and get cigarettes. So I would go to get cigarettes for the sole experiment to just smoke them with the bulb apparatus and look at the amount of tar and nicotine in the cigarettes. Wow. And so you just saw like Camels, which had no filters, had like the greatest amount of particulate matter. And then I had got a lot of information and materials from the American Cancer Society about diseases associated with smoking, and that was like throat cancer, oral cancer. So I had all these gory pictures, which kind of fascinated me because I was a weirdo. And so I had all this stuff, and I kept plugging through high school, and then finally my science department head just told me to apply for. They had a summer, I guess, apprenticeship program at what was then called the Michigan Cancer Foundation. It's now the Karmanos Cancer Institute. And so I think that was a summer of 11th grade. And if she hadn't told me, I would have never applied. And then I got in that, and I did some stuff looking at some old drugs from Kodak. Of all things, Kodak used to make some anti-cancer compounds, and we were testing them in acute myeloid and chronic myeloid leukemia cell lines to look at how effective these drugs were and then what was stopping them from being effective. And we basically found out some of these phase 1 metabolizing enzymes were deactivating many of the compounds. But so that really got me hooked on science. And then at that point I was doing research every summer, and anywhere I could find it, I did it.
That's amazing. And so you're saying that it started young, but before I dive into that, I want to say something. You said two things. One, you have chronic asthma. I had chronic asthma. But you also mentioned Michigan. Are you from the Michigan area?
Yes, I grew up in Detroit, smack dab, west side.
Listen, you know what? It might be something in the weather because you're from Detroit, and I had chronic asthma, and I was in and out of the hospital for forever. That's why I moved from Michigan to Hawaii. So you can't tell me it's nothing in the air. Here it is, two African-American males who suffered the same illness from the same environment.
But also, no, you had all Motor City and all the vehicles, all the car exhausts, and then even though that they were put in before I was, all the freeways going right through the middle of neighborhoods, and all the trucking, and so you have all these environmental factors on top of the stuff that's already wafting from the other parts of the country, even though we're technically still in the industrial Midwest, but there's still particulate matter smoking drifting from places west of Michigan.
Wow. Very interesting find as we talk about this. So you got into science and at an early age, but was science pushed in your home? Was science pushed in your community?
No, I was just a weirdo. I just was always
somebody with a PhD behind their name was not about to say they was a weirdo, because look, if being a weirdo leads to a PhD, I got to go back and redo it.
I was the one that was always reading books, always had a book in my hand, and then I got interested in science, and then I got interested in engineering, and honestly, I probably became interested in engineering because I'm going to say it. I watched the Transformers as a kid, and I used to look at how things moved and operated, and I said, well, how do we take things apart and change them? And so sort of I always had this thread of engineering and biology in my head, and so it took me a while to figure out how to combine them, but finally I kind of got it sort of when I did the master's, and then as I kept going, I went back and forth between engineering and biology. So was doing BME. Well, I was doing things BME adjacent before it was trendy.
Wow. And you mentioned a master's. What is your master's in?
My master's is in biomedical engineering, and I got that from Wisconsin. And my undergrad is in mechanical engineering, and I obtained that from Michigan Technological University.
So these are fancy terms. You got to break it down, because I'm just a lonesome nurse. So you got to break it down for me. What are these fancy terms and what do they mean?
So mechanical engineering is probably one of the more, well, how to describe it? It's a robust field where you can do many things. It's about mechanics, energy flow, thermodynamics. So you can look at building, you can do design. So mechanical is a very diverse degree as far as what you can do. So a lot of automotive design, you think about biomechanics, you think of to a degree instrumentation. You base a lot of that is mechanical. Anything with motion, motors, gears, and then biomedical engineering is a more broad field, where it gets tricky, because you could be on a more molecular side or a more instrumentation side, or in the spectrum of biomechanics. So you could do, biomedical devices, you do EKGs, those kind of instrumentations. You could do imaging, you could do cellular engineering, you could do bone biology, you could do biomechanics, whether it's, bone, ligament, tendon, because I've done a lot of work in bone and ligament. And so it's just a very broad degree. So there are many places for you to go. So when people are looking at programs, I try to tell them, don't look at a program because it's the top ranked program in BME. You have to look at what the faculty and researchers do and see if there's a fit for you for what you're trying to do. Because that's the thing a lot of people don't understand.
And it sounds like you've mastered that portion. How do you help people figure out if this is a field they want to get into? We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do you help kind of facilitate that conversation?
Well, it's generally because I've lived this whole track. I went through college as a first-gen scholar. So first one, to get the undergrad, first one to get the master's, first one to get the PhD, first one to do the postdocs, which I tell you, postdocs are a whole different kind of monster. But I've sort of taken the things I've learned along the way and saw what worked and what didn't work. And now I can sort of advise people and say, hey, what are you thinking for your degree transition? Trying to help them understand, what's coming after your degree. So when you're first in, you don't know there's a master's, you don't know there's a PhD, you don't know there's postdoc, and also you don't know if you need to do them. And often academia only tracks you to stay in academia. They don't really teach you about these alternative career paths. And so if you only absorb academia, you will be somewhat shielded from what you actually can know and do. And so I try to make sure people know their options, let them know what they can do and all the possibilities available to them. Because if you don't know what you know, or if you don't know what you can do, then you might end up doing something that's not really effective for you.
And so you mentioned the term even I haven't heard. You said a postdoc?
Yep. So basically your PhD is your terminal degree. So that means you are doctor, whatever. But it's often, generally, if you're trying to get faculty positions, then you do postdoctoral. They're called postdoctoral fellowships or postdocs. And so those are then where you are expected to go to another lab and then pretty much be able to independently run and do experiments and get grants and try to get papers out to then show you can be eventually an independent faculty member.
Wow.
At least in concept, that's what it's supposed to be. But the postdocs are still woefully underpaid, and you still are barely getting by. And the one thing that is really, really what people don't know, and it's a hard lesson to learn, is those postdoc years do not count as professional experience. So I'll make that clear. They do not count as professional experience. Technically, even your PhD years don't count as professional experience. So if you're trying to apply for jobs and trying to get in pharma or whatnot, those years don't count. So I try to tell people, if you want to go in a pharma, even go to start, just get in, because none of the postdoc years count.
Wow. You know what? You're just dropping gems on this podcast, because so many people are getting a doctoral degree in various different fields, but especially like you're saying, the PhD, and learning that they potentially may not count. I think it's something that people should know, because sometimes people get a degree because they think it's a means to an end. But I think you've already highlighted that the degree is just a paper. At least from my standpoint, I tell people, first of all, I have a different philosophy for college. Yes, I am a doctoral student. Yes, officially I have 5 classes left. But yeah, but the degree itself is not going to move mountains for you. It may open some doors, but you have to learn how to walk through them. And here's what I tell people, especially at the bachelor's to master's level, even some doctoral level, you're often learning out of old books. So it's already old. And then when you get the degree, if you do nothing with it, you're stuck in that time. And a very good example is I have a master's in informatics. I got it before the AI boom. So what good is a master's in informatics if I'm not continuing to learn about the new technology and how it's impacting healthcare informatics? So you have to continue to grow. So just getting a degree is not it. What you're saying is you got to continue to do things like the postdoctoral postbac. I had never heard until just now. And then for you to say, like you say, that it is underfunded. Why is that the case? We need research, but we don't want to put funding to research.
Yes, it's many institutions still consider a training phase, but you're very skilled at that point, but you still don't have an independent faculty position. That's supposed to be your last jump to get one. But often what we're having now is people are doing 2, 3 postdocs, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, because they go on the market, they can't get any faculty jobs. And so none of these positions are open, and so they have to stay in longer. And it can be quite isolating and frustrating, because the postdoc years will probably be the loneliest years of your life as a researcher. I would tell you, it'll be your loneliest years, because you're not young enough to hang out with the grad students, at least you shouldn't be. And then you're not faculty, so you can't hang out with the faculty. So you're just like, all right, let's get this done. So
the gems you are dropping, but I want to take you to one of the topics that I think people don't understand, and that's health equity. And you have some experience in musculoskeletal biology, biomechanics, cancer research. How has that shaped your approach to health equity?
Ironically, when I was going through my training, I wasn't thinking about health equity, because you're so busy just trying to get your experiments done.
You just want to graduate.
Yep. And I'll be honest, I didn't really start thinking about health equity probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it just because when I started my PhD in some century, we still didn't have we had no biomarkers for lung cancer. It was still, the options were still chemotherapy and radiation. I think EGFR was discovered somewhere between around 2004, 2005. And that has led to the whole boom in precision medicine and thoracic. And now we have 11 biomarkers and multiple lines of therapy. Mm-hmm. Before when I started, we didn't even have that. It was just, so I was doing a lot of characterizing proteins that played a role, enzymes that played a role in drug resistance, and then trying to perturb them by doing genetic knockouts. But we've made so many advances since then.
Wow. What is health equity?
So health equity, at least by my definition, I think health equity is intentionality. You have to be intentional about creating an intervention or interventions for a group or groups that are experiencing a disparity or inequity, so that they can have the same or equal outcomes as the majority population, whatever the majority population is. So if you are not actively doing an intervention for a group that is not having the same outcomes, it is not health equity.
So give us an example of some disproportionate groups who are underserved, not represented. Maybe clinical trials aren't done for that particular group. Give me an example.
So let's go with lung cancer, a space I know very well.
Lung cancer.
In general, we can talk about clinical trial diversity. You hear a lot recently about all these companies saying they want to do clinical trial diversity, increasing clinical trial diversity. They're trying to do outreach. But then there was an IQVIA report that just came out, I think, last year that showed clinical trial diversity is the lowest it's been in a decade.
Why?
Because they're still not getting the populations. But then if you think about where trials are often conducted, they're often conducted at the major medical centers. And let's give you another stat I just learned. I think, we'll put it in perspective. I think it is 50% of clinical trials occur in 1 to 2% of the zip codes in the country.
Wow. That's saying something. How does history impact people's willingness to do clinical trials? Right? There's been some clinical trials done on people that they didn't sign up for, or they were told they were in a study and it wasn't the correct study. They knew they were injecting these people with pathogens. So how has that impacted people's willingness to sign up for these clinical trials?
Well, you mentioned, besides Tuskegee, there were the Mississippi appendectomy. There's, just name an experiment. There was, I think, a jail in Philadelphia that was putting all kind of toxic chemicals in their patient population that were often Black. And this was before and a lot of the stuff is finally what led to informed consent for trials. It has led to protection of patients. This stuff is only recent. Even if you look, maybe it was the 60s or 70s, when they were doing all this stuff with DDT and all these pesticides, but you're seeing all the effects that happen in women and their offspring. But guess what? These stuff were often only studied in men and male populations. So now, I think in the 90s, it was an FDA rule that you have to account for females in your samples, because what people don't know is while men and women are humans, there are still different patterns of growth hormone signaling that impact different cytochrome P450s or drug metabolism enzymes in male versus female. So they have some enzymes are the same level, but others are more up in men, some are more up in women. A lot of people don't know this. So if you aren't testing your therapies in animal models that represent both genders or in patients that are going to be treated, then you're not really going to have a product that works. And then if we look in lung cancer, there was something that came out a couple years ago that showed that they looked at all the FDA approvals in thoracic for immuno-oncology. I think maybe 2 to 3% of the participants were Black, and maybe 5 to 6% were Hispanic. And then you're getting the post-market analysis and seeing all these different immune adverse events in Black populations. But guess what? Because they're not in the trials. But, if doctors asked more diverse patients, would they participate? Studies are showing they are more likely to do it if they're asked. But often minority populations aren't asked to participate. They're not offered biomarker testing. They're not offered clinical trials. They're not even given standard of care. But if they are generally asked about trials, they are more likely to participate. But because many of these trials are run at these major medical centers, when you're a diverse and underserved patient, you go to a place that does not look like you, and the front staff don't look like you, and then most of the people in there don't look like you, and then you can sense this, for lack of a better term, you don't feel seen or heard, then why would you engage? And a lot of these trial teams are not diverse. They don't reflect the communities where they're trying to recruit people, and they don't really go into those communities to provide information and resources to let them know that even these facilities exist. So it has to be more robust and complete, continuous engagement, but that's where the things fall apart, because it takes long-term commitment. You can't just come in and say, hey, we want to do a trial, give us people, and then you get your data, and then you never say anything and report it back. Well, that's not going to build trust either.
So given all the disparities you have in the field that you're in, what keeps you in it? What keeps you waking up every day, going to work, running your organization, and doing the things that you do?
Well, the big thing for me is that when I was at one of the orgs, some patients and researchers started reaching out to me to start developing materials and content for helping Black patients understand lung cancer disparities, understand inequities. And then I just started doing more of it. It was not intentional, but now we just had a paper that came out November last year where we showed that basically we looked at all these lung cancer cell lines that are in the literature. We found over 800 cell lines. Half of them were, well, 300 were unidentifiable. Maybe about 300 were from Japan or Asia, but mainly Japan. The rest were primarily white. We found only 31 cell lines across the types of lung cancer from Black individuals. Only 31 of 800 plus. We found no cell lines from Hispanic. We found none from
Wow.
Native Americans or Alaska Natives.
Mm-hmm.
We found nothing from Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islanders. We just found nothing. So if this is what we have as our starting materials for all of our studies, and these cell lines tend to become the precursors to the phase 1 and phase 2 trials that become therapies, then we're going to continue to perpetuate the disparities because we don't have diverse representation even in the samples that we're testing.
Wow. You know, it's interesting hearing you speak. You know, some of these things I think are known, but I think some of this is not well known. What do you think can be done to increase the diversity, equity, and inclusion and lower the health disparities that we are facing in the healthcare landscape?
I think you have to keep trying to go and educate, making sure people know resources that are available. One of the things we're going to start to do with the nonprofit is trying to create general medical infographics to help break down all this complex jargon that's in my chart. Like, you know, my mom still has asked me, well, what does this term mean? And like, the doctors should be able to explain this, but often the doctors will say, oh, well, go read it in my chart. But that doesn't help if
you don't know what it means.
You still don't know what this means. And if you have all these descriptions of what to do, but you still have a jargon, how are they supposed to understand? And then we're trying to create general medical and cancer infographics because we know the first, when you hear you have cancer, everything else you start off, you're not hearing anything else. But but some patients only get told over phone. They don't get told in person. So we have to do better at navigating and helping them understand the disease. So we're trying to create some of these resources to help them be better prepared to deal with their health care and then be able to go in the clinic and eventually advocate for the care they should get versus what they do get. But the other things we can work to do, and which we're doing, we can partner with orgs to help develop mentorship and training programs to bring in diverse scholars to help give them that robust mentoring and those wraparound skills, not just writing, but navigating these transitions, understanding the barriers you will face, determining when you should stay and leave a place, and really making sure you're more prepared to go because the world is still not going to stop for you. So how do we put you in a position to at least succeed and thrive as much as possible? Because if we can get more in the workforce, then we can likely have more people that can advocate for these diverse populations, can advocate for research in these populations, can advocate for grants for research impacting these communities. And then we can have providers that may be able to give better standard of care and more nuanced care because if you have a Black doctor, you might, we should look at this, blood work or something because it's just something intuitive but it's not routinely taught in medical education.
So you mentioned the foundation, and that's something that you've started?
Yes. So I launched a foundation called the STEMM and Cancer Health Equity, or SCHEQ Foundation, and I launched it last year in August, really with the goal of increasing STEM workforce diversity and improving outcomes for underrepresented, underserved, and marginalized populations navigating the cancer care continuum. As I went through my life and career, I just saw so many barriers and pitfalls, and I said if I was ever in a position to make an impact for diverse people and make sure that they can get access to STEM careers, they succeed in STEM careers, and then we can get information to patients to help them understand and advocate for the care they get. That's what I would do. I didn't know it was going to be what I was going to create, but it is what happened. If you'd asked me this 5 years ago, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. Like, I'm not going to open a nonprofit. But as I worked along, I kept saying, like, we have to really do stuff specifically for these populations, because a lot of times there's materials out there, but it's not written from the lens of those that are diverse. They often talk about the happy side of treatments and therapies. Like, we have these outcomes, but often the people that benefit from these outcomes are ones that tend to be already independently wealthy and can pay for stuff out of pocket or have multiple insurances, but those who need the help the most cannot.
Wow. So you opened your doors, and you mentioned kind of population you serve, but you have an extra M in your STEM. What is that extra M for? A lot of people, I think when I see STEM, it's a 4-letter word. You have an extra M.
Yep, it means marinara. Just kidding. No.
Listen, that's going to lead into my next question. You talk about food. My next question is going to be something around that. Trust me. But I'll let you tell us what the extra M is.
The M is medicine. So we have different plays on STEM. Traditional STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. Sometimes you add the extra M for medicine. Some people say STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, but they're all general variations or plays on the same word. But okay. I added medicine just really, even though it's technically included in the STEM, but really to make it clear that we're trying to address the medical stuff as well as the patient education and the workforce.
Excellent. So you said marinara, but I'm going to ask you, this is one of my questions that I have for you. And if you can invite 3 people, dead or alive, to a dinner party to discuss the state of healthcare, who would they be?
See, I was not expecting that question, and I don't think I like you for asking me this. You really got me off guard right now.
And here it is, right? Everything was going so smooth, but you mentioned marinara, so you opened the gates for me to segue into that. But ultimately, right, you have a dinner party where you can invite 3 people to talk about the state of healthcare. They might impact it, they may be just listeners, but who would they be?
Probably would say the current Surgeon General. Doing some phenomenal work and just really understands and gets it. I would say Serena Williams, not because I want to talk about health, but I just am a big fan and I just have never met her. But since you're making me put names out there,
listen, but she holds weight. She holds weight to get things done as well. She's a figure people watch and people move. After seeing and observe her, so I think that's a credible person at the table.
And I would probably say Barack Obama, because he just has such an astute mind and just really is a continuous learner and always try to understand issues and problems and how we can address them. So
I love it. I love that dinner table. I can only imagine what you will be talking about with these people, but ultimately, that table is going to be filled with people who are game changers and trailblazers who can make things happen. So, as you think about your vision for your foundation for the future, what is your vision for the future for your foundation?
Really what I want us to be is 2 things. One, a known resource for diverse individuals that know they can come learn about STEM careers, how to navigate these careers, and how to get in the workforce. And the other major thing is really knowing us being a go-to resource for any underserved patient or population starting on their cancer journey, just so they know we can get you information and resources. And if we don't have it, we can then direct you to other orgs that might actually be able to help you based on your race, ethnicity, gender, etc. So that's ultimately, how do we bring information and resources to the people no matter where they are?
Interesting. And, you clearly have a passion for this. And you've taken that passion, and I believe you're getting ready to host your own very own. Is it a webinar? Is it a conference? What do you have coming up?
So in November, it'll be November 18th to 19th in Atlanta. It is our second.
Just a few weeks away.
Yes. It'll be our second Lung Cancer Health Equity Summit. The topic theme of this event is Black and Latino populations navigating lung cancer, problems and solutions. So
I love it.
we often talk about the problems these communities face, and we can talk about problems ad nauseum, but rarely do we bring together stakeholders from all levels. And I mean, we'll have patients, caregivers, researchers, clinicians, surgeons, policy, government, pharma, that, discussing interventions and solutions they have made or created that are actually reducing disparities, reducing inequities, and or improving outcomes.
Where is this going to be held at? How do people get in contact and learn about it and attend? How do people reach you?
So this will be held in Atlanta. We don't have the hotel yet. That'll be probably a few weeks. So be on the lookout, but you can send questions to info@SCHEQ.org. We also have a save the date up on the website. We will plan to have the online registration up. Well, we'll have it up in August. It'll be mid-August, and then people will be able to register, and so it'll be different registration rates. So it'll be free for patients, caregivers, survivors, and then it'll scale up. We're working to try to have continuing medical education. It's not officially approved yet, but it's a good chance we'll have continuing medical education credits for nursing, pharma, PA, and pharmacy, but that is not official yet. But by the time this airs, it probably will be. And so we really just have these robust speakers. We have 2 great keynote speakers lined up. And I really made sure, because I'm very cognizant of this, that we had no panels, because I refuse to have all man panels. Like, there's no reason in this day
I love it
that you should have a panel with all men. So no manels and no non-diverse manels. It's none. This is a no manel conference.
Dr. Manley, it has been a pleasure to speak with you. It is clear you have a passion about health equity, cancer research, clinical trials. It is clear you have a wealth of knowledge, and I just appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with me and share some of your experience, the knowledge that you have with myself, and not only me, the audience. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. My whole big thing is, how do we help people know what's available and open their eyes to things that they may not know they can see or do? And so this is always what I try to do, and how I help and how I advocate. And this is a continuing theme, and this is what I'll keep doing. So I'm greatly appreciative of being included on today's show, and I'm glad that I was able to hopefully offer some insights that will help people.
Man, I think you mover, a shaker. If you haven't visited your website, shout out your website again and how they can reach you.
It's SCHEQ.org, www.SCHEQ.org. And that's the short version of STEM and cancer health equity.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you to everyone for joining me here on Common Ground with SMK Medical. We hope that our discussion with Dr. Manley provided you with valuable insights into the industry's pressing issues. We will continue to create a safe space for meaningful conversations on healthcare and look forward to bringing you more informative and engaging episodes. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay tuned to Common Ground with SMK Medical. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe on our social media pages. You can follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn at SMK Medical. And if you shall, you can follow me at Your Healthcare Consultant on Instagram and TikTok for more healthcare related content.